It began with the warning sirens. They weren't the kind people usually noticed, the soft blaring tones that went off in cities when storms approached, but something deeper, something almost instinctual, triggered a shiver across the world. People paused in streets, in offices, on trains. Even animals seemed to sense the change. From the highest skyscraper to the smallest village, life hesitated for a heartbeat. Like the world itself was holding its breath. The reports came slowly at first, dripping in from satellites and monitoring stations. Aliens had attacked. That was what the news said. Massive strikes, targeting what they called key human infrastructure. Governments around the world went into emergency mode, deploying what little forces they could publicly acknowledge, while privately, much more was stirring. But strangely, nobody panicked. Not really. Humans didn't run screaming into the streets. Children kept playing in backyards. Teenagers stared at their devices. Adults finished conversations mid-sentence. Some glanced up at the sky. But nobody collapsed in fear. There was something odd about the attack itself. It wasn't immediate devastation. No city was destroyed in a single instant. No population wiped out in one wave. The bombs or energy strikes, or whatever weapons the aliens had used, hit the cities, sure, but they barely made a dent. A few buildings collapsed, some fires started, and lights flickered in distant neighborhoods. On the surface, it looked like a disaster. From orbit, it might have seemed like the end of humanity, but down on Earth, people noticed something strange. Most of the destruction felt superficial, as if it had been carefully measured. And then the world held its breath again, waiting. Military officers in command centers exchanged puzzled glances. Why are they holding back? One muttered, tapping fingers against a console. Analysts projected numbers, calculated losses, predicted chaos, but the reality didn't match the theory. Humanity, somehow, seemed prepared, not scrambling, not panicking, just continuing. In offices, people picked up phones, sending messages to loved ones. In shelters, families quietly huddled together. There was no hysteria, only calm determination. The aliens watching from afar must have felt confusion. Their ships, massive and gleaming, hovered over Earth, confident in their ability to destroy a species they clearly considered inferior. They expected screaming, fear, a desperate counterattack fueled by panic, but what they saw instead was human resilience. And worse, humans didn't react like other species they had encountered in the galaxy. No wild displays of anger, no blinding defensive maneuvers, no frantic attempts to retaliate. Just observation. Just calm. Scientists in observatories reported anomalies. The planet's shields, some of which had been quietly developed for decades, activated with precision. A network of defense grids, invisible from the outside, engaged automatically. Satellites adjusted orbit paths, redirecting incoming debris. Energy pulses meant to hit major cities fizzled harmlessly into the atmosphere. Every strike the aliens launched seemed anticipated, as though the humans had already seen it coming, already prepared the countermeasures. Meanwhile, ordinary people went about simple acts that felt almost mundane, but carried weight in this moment of crisis. People handed out food in their neighborhoods, helped neighbors repair damage from the strikes, carried children and the elderly to safer places. None of it was heroic in a cinematic way, but every act contributed to an invisible network of survival and organization. It was quiet, but the quiet held a kind of power. Command centers across the world began compiling the reports. Every calculation, every projection, every algorithm led to the same conclusion. Humans had been ready for this attack for years. Not in an obvious, boastful way, but quietly, strategically. Shelters, evacuation routes, medical supplies, hidden weapons, communication networks, everything had been meticulously prepared, tested, and refined. The aliens assumed that humanity was primitive, uncoordinated, a species to be easily crushed. Instead, they faced the calm eye of a species that knew the storm was coming and was ready to survive it. And still, from the surface, it seemed like nothing had happened. In some cities, lights flickered and windows cracked, but people continued with their lives. Teachers calmly guided children to safer zones while still explaining lessons. Farmers assessed minor damage to crops, making plans to protect the next season. Engineers patched small infrastructure failures, while silently preparing larger systems for activation. Everywhere, people quietly adjusted, as if the attack were merely an inconvenient hiccup in an otherwise ordinary day. In the skies above, alien observers grew frustrated. Every strike they attempted was neutralized before it caused serious harm. Entire fleets had been deployed to force humanity into surrender, but the humans did not respond as expected. There were no desperate calls, no hasty retreats. Humans simply adapted. They moved resources, redirected power, and repaired damage faster than the aliens could destroy it. From above, the calm coordination looked almost eerie, as if every human was part of a single organism, anticipating the next move before it even happened. In underground bunkers, scientists, engineers, and strategists worked in perfect silence. They monitored alien energy signatures, predicted orbital trajectories, and coordinated Earth's defense grids with precise timing. Yet there was no arrogance, no fear, only methodical problem-solving. Every strike by the aliens was catalogued, analyzed, and countered. Every civilian affected by the attack was assisted quietly, without fanfare. As humanity continued to function as a resilient whole. By the end of the first day, the aliens' confidence began to crack. Their attacks had failed to provoke chaos, failed to instill fear, and failed to force humanity into surrender. For the first time, they faced a species that would not bend to terror, that would not react predictably to violence. Across the galaxy, other observers, smaller species, neutral empires, watched in disbelief. Earth had been bombed, yet it seemed untouched. Its people, far from terrified, remained calm, resilient, and quietly in control of their own world. Even the media played a part. Journalists reported from the field without hysteria, focusing on facts rather than fear. People watched broadcasts calmly, seeing their neighbors helping each other, engineers restoring power grids, and authorities calmly coordinating the emergency response. The narrative being written across screens was not one of destruction, but of endurance, of quiet strength. By the time night fell, Earth had endured the first wave of strikes with minimal disruption. Streets were lit again, emergency systems functioned, and families found shelter. Alien fleets hovered silently above, unsure how to respond. Humanity had not reacted with vengeance, but with a patience and resilience that none of their enemies had predicted. The silence that followed the attacks was not fear, was readiness. It was a warning the aliens could not yet comprehend. Humans were not fragile. Humans were not weak. And humanity had not yet shown its true strength. Somewhere in the hidden corners of Earth, military commanders prepared for the next phase. They knew the strikes would continue. They knew the aliens expected fear, chaos, and surrender. But humanity's response would be different. It would be calculated. It would be decisive. And it would remind the galaxy that underestimating humanity was a mistake. No one would ever make twice. As the night stretched over Earth, the planet seemed peaceful, almost serene. But beneath that calm, under every city, in every command center, and in every quiet act of preparation, humans were awake, ready, and waiting. They had endured the first strike without panic. They had not retaliated yet, but the message was already clear. Humanity would not fall, humanity would not break, and humanity would respond in ways that no one, not the aliens, not the galaxy, would see coming. After the first wave of alien strikes, the world slowly returned to a fragile sense of normalcy. Streets buzzed again with quiet activity. People emerged from shelters, assessing small damages to homes and workplaces, repairing broken windows, clearing debris. The fear that the aliens had expected to see in every human was nowhere to be found. Instead, it was focus, cooperation, and determination. People instinctively understood that this was not the end, but the beginning of something much larger. Beneath the surface of cities and continents, humanity's unseen defenses were coming alive. Long-hidden underground facilities, some built decades ago and purposefully kept secret, were humming with activity. These were not just bunkers. They were control centers, laboratories, and strategic hubs where scientists, engineers, and strategists quietly coordinated the planet's survival. Every network, every system, every energy grid had been designed to work together. And now, for the first time, all of it was being tested. Satellites in orbit shifted positions, some descending to relay signals faster, others moving to shield orbital assets. Power plants were rerouted, creating invisible barriers to incoming attacks. Communication systems activated encrypted channels that only humans could access. In towns across the globe, emergency generators turned on automatically, maintaining power for critical systems. Even transportation networks, from subways to freight lines, adjusted to prioritize the movement of essential goods. Nothing was left to chance. The aliens had assumed that humanity's technology was primitive, uncoordinated, and reactive. They believed Earth's species would panic, dividing themselves in fear while their cities crumbled. What they did not know was that humans had quietly spent decades preparing for a worst-case scenario. This preparation had never been broadcast, never announced, never bragged about. It was not meant for show. It was meant for survival. And now, as the first real test came, every plan, every simulation, every quietly stored resource was being used to its fullest potential. Ordinary humans were part of this preparation without even realizing the full scope. Teachers, doctors, delivery workers, farmers, and engineers all found themselves performing small but critical roles. Some rerouted energy to shelters, others repaired damaged communication lines, and still others moved supplies where they were most needed. The collective effort was seamless, almost instinctive. Every human action contributed to the larger picture of survival. In control rooms hidden beneath mountains, strategists monitored alien movements. Every strike the invaders had made was analyzed in real time. Patterns were being discovered, weak points mapped, and vulnerabilities noted. It was not a reckless counterattack. It was careful, calculated observation. Humans did not strike first. They did not react with emotion or rage. They observed, understood, and prepared. And in that quiet preparation, there was a power the aliens could not see or understand from orbit. Even civilians played a role. Children helped adults move supplies and clear debris. Families repaired damaged homes together. Communities organized, forming local networks to share food, water, and medical aid. People offered support quietly, without waiting for orders. Every action reinforced the strength that the aliens had failed to recognize, the strength of humanity working as a whole. Meanwhile, humans were not idle about understanding their enemy. From secure facilities, scientists and engineers monitored alien transmissions, recording signals, decoding patterns, and identifying weaknesses. Ships hovering in orbit, massive and imposing, were cataloged, tracked, and mapped. Every alien technology that could be understood was studied, every pattern noted. Even the aliens' own weapon systems were analyzed to determine how they could be neutralized without unnecessary destruction. Humanity's approach was methodical. They planned to fight smart, not blindly. As the days passed, the aliens' attacks continued, but each wave became less effective. They began to notice that humans did not respond in predictable ways. Every city adapted, every strike was countered, every attempt to sow panic failed. Energy weapons fizzled, infrastructure repairs were swift, and evacuation plans functioned with astonishing efficiency. The aliens had expected terror and chaos, but instead, they found calm and adaptability. In some ways, the human response was almost invisible. No one was calling for heroics. No one demanded recognition. People acted out of necessity and compassion. Doctors treated injuries, engineers fixed power grids, and neighbors helped each other in quiet but vital ways. These small actions, repeated across thousands of cities and villages, created an invisible network of resilience that the aliens could not see from space. Military forces were also quietly mobilizing. Not in a rush, not in panic, but with precision and coordination that stunned outside observers. Fleets were ready to deploy, defensive systems activated, and hidden caches of advanced technology moved into position. Unlike the aliens, who sought to destroy first and understand later, humans had learned to prepare first, strike only when necessary. This approach gave them a level of control that no enemy could predict. Every movement, every adjustment, every act of preparation built a pattern. It was a choreography of survival, practiced silently over decades. The aliens could see the humans on the surface, but they could not comprehend the scale of preparation beneath. They assumed vulnerability where there was none. They expected fear where there was only quiet determination. Humanity, they did not yet realize, had already mastered the first phase of survival, endurance. And yet, even as humans prepared, life continued in other ways. People laughed, cried, argued, and celebrated small victories in the midst of chaos. Farmers salvaged crops, students studied in shelters, and families shared meals in partially damaged homes. The attack had not destroyed life, it had sharpened it. Humanity refused to bow, refused to crumble, and in that refusal, every action gained weight and purpose. The aliens continued their bombardment, misjudging humanity at every turn. They did not see the careful organization in every town. They did not notice the invisible systems keeping people safe and fed. They assumed destruction equaled victory. But they had yet to understand that humanity's strength was in its coordination, resilience, and unbroken spirit. In bunkers and command centers, humans quietly simulated every possible scenario. They mapped alien fleets, tested defense systems, and prepared for potential retaliation. But even as they prepared, there was no panic. Each person understood their role. Each system functioned as intended. Each plan remained in place. The calm that seemed so ordinary on the surface was, in reality, a carefully maintained engine of survival, precision, and patience. Communities became part of the system naturally. Volunteers distributed supplies, repaired minor damage, and provided aid to those in need. These were not heroic acts captured on screens. They were quiet, essential contributions that strengthened the resilience of humanity. Every small action mattered. Every human mattered. Together, they formed a force far greater than any alien expected. By the end of the second day, the aliens had begun to question their assumptions. Their strikes had not shattered humanity. Their attacks had not created chaos. Instead, humans had quietly adapted, learned, and strengthened. Every new strike met with coordination, intelligence, and care. It was a revelation the invaders were unprepared for. Humanity's strength was not in technology alone, but in the unity, resourcefulness, and adaptability of every person. As night fell across the planet once again, humans rested where they could. Cities glimmered faintly with lights, towns hummed with activity, and underground bunkers remained alive with quiet calculation. Humanity had survived the first wave. Humanity had not responded with anger, but with readiness. And in that readiness, a message was being sent not just to the aliens, but to every observer across the galaxy. Underestimate humanity at your own risk. The calm on Earth was deliberate. Humans had not yet unleashed their full strength. They were still preparing, still observing, still understanding. And when the time came, their response would be precise, coordinated, and unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The aliens had attacked expecting chaos, fear, and desperation. Instead, they had found order, patience, and resilience. They had found humanity. By the third day, the aliens had grown frustrated. Their attacks continued, but they were not achieving the results they had expected. Humanity was calm, coordinated, and unfazed. The cities remained standing, the population remained active, and the planet's defenses were functioning perfectly. From orbit, the aliens could see human activity, but they could not understand it. They assumed confusion where there was clarity, hesitation where there was precise calculation, and weakness where there was strength. Meanwhile, deep within Earth's command centers, humans were preparing to send a message. Not a plea for peace, not a surrender, not an expression of fear or rage, but a clear, unmistakable signal that humanity had observed, understood, and anticipated every move the aliens had made. The message had to be simple yet powerful. It had to convey intelligence, awareness, and capability. It had to warn the aliens without provoking unnecessary panic among humans. The transmission was prepared quietly, with engineers and strategists working together. It would be sent across multiple frequencies, encrypted to ensure that only the intended recipients could understand the full meaning. The content was short and precise, a display of capability rather than threat, a demonstration of understanding rather than emotion. Humans did not shout. They did not demand attention. They simply showed that they were aware, prepared, and ready. Ordinary citizens played a part, though they often did not realize it. Technicians ensured that communication arrays functioned perfectly. Operators monitored alien signals for interference. Every adjustment, every calculation, every system check contributed to the final message. It was humanity acting as one entity, even though millions of individuals were performing countless small actions. Each act mattered. Each human mattered. When the message finally went out, it was calm, efficient, and unmistakable. It was received by the aliens in their command centers, transmitted across ships and stations in orbit. For a moment, silence stretched across space. The aliens had expected chaos, confusion, or panic in humanity's response. Instead, they received precision, clarity, and quiet power. It was a moment that would later be described by observers as a turning point. The content of the transmission was simple in wording, but complex in meaning. It acknowledged the attack, documented the aliens' actions, and showed that humans had already adapted. It indicated that every strike had been tracked, every fleet had been mapped, and every strategy had been anticipated. More importantly, it hinted that humanity had plans of its own, that every weakness had been noted, and that retaliation would come, but only at the right time. With full effectiveness, the aliens were unprepared for subtlety. They had assumed that any intelligent species would respond with fear, anger, or chaos. Humans responded differently. Humans responded with patience, with observation, and with understanding. The message contained no threats, no aggression. Yet it carried weight, a quiet weight that spoke of preparation, intelligence, and inevitability. Back on Earth, life continued amidst the preparations. People repaired damaged infrastructure, tended to those affected by the strikes, and maintained daily routines. Children played cautiously in safe zones, students continued learning in temporary shelters, and adults quietly coordinated supply lines. Every action reinforced the message sent to the aliens. Humanity was functioning as a single, coordinated species, unbroken by fear and united in purpose. Even as the transmission reached alien fleets, humans continued refining their preparations. Satellites adjusted orbit paths to provide better surveillance. Defense grids recalibrated for incoming attacks. Hidden reserves of energy and resources were moved into place. Every system was tested again and again, not out of panic, but out of thoroughness. Humanity did not act recklessly. It acted carefully, with foresight and precision. The aliens responded in confusion. Their fleets paused, scanning and analyzing the transmission. Signals were interpreted, translated, and examined, but the meaning eluded them. They had expected an emotional reaction, not a measured, intelligent display of capability. The transmission had no anger, no desperation, no surrender. It simply said, "We see you, we understand you, and we are ready." For humans, the act of sending the message was also symbolic. It marked a shift from passive endurance to subtle assertion. Until now, humanity had focused on survival, adaptation, and observation. Now, with a single act of communication, they signaled that they were not merely surviving. They were aware, capable, and strategic. It was a warning disguised as a statement, a declaration disguised as calm. Communities continued to contribute. Volunteers ensured that every message relay station was fully operational. Engineers monitored energy grids to prevent interference. People everywhere, even those far from command centers, became part of the system. Humanity was sending a message as a whole, not as individuals. Every act of cooperation reinforced the transmission, adding invisible strength to the words sent across spacedot. In the alien command centers, confusion grew. The leaders had expected terror, chaos, and surrender. Instead, they found observation, patience, and intelligence. They did not understand humanity's methods or motivations. Every strike they attempted was met with adaptation. Every plan they made was anticipated. And now, with the transmission, humanity had announced that this was only the beginning of their awareness. Despite the tension, humans continued daily life. Streets remained active, hospitals functioned efficiently, and supply chains adapted to damaged areas. Teachers continued classes, doctors continued treating patients, and communities continued working together. The attack had not stopped life. It had refined it. Humans had found a way to live within crisis, maintaining coordination and resilience while sending a warning that was impossible to ignore. The message had another purpose as well. Beyond the warning to the aliens, it served as a unifying act for humanity itself. People on Earth, knowing that a signal had been sent and received, felt a shared sense of purpose. They were not passive victims of an external threat. They were participants in a coordinated effort to survive, to protect, and to demonstrate strength. The act of sending the message created a quiet confidence across the planet. Meanwhile, hidden fleets and secret installations continued their silent work. Humans cataloged alien technology, analyzed fleet patterns, and studied weapon systems. Every observation added to the collective knowledge, building a picture of the enemy that the aliens could not see. Humanity's strength was not in brute force alone. It was in intelligence, in coordination, and in understanding. The transmission was a first step, a signal that Earth was awake and aware. As the day ended, humans remained vigilant but calm. The transmission had been sent. The message was received. The aliens had been warned. Now humanity waited, not in fear, but in readiness. Every system, every plan, every individual action contributed to an invisible shield of preparation and awareness. Humanity had not yet struck. They had not yet unleashed their full power. They were observing, learning, and preparing for the moment when action would be decisive. In the skies above, alien fleets hovered uncertainly. They had expected chaos and submission. Instead, they found control, intelligence, and patience. They had underestimated the very species they had attacked. And that underestimation would, in time, prove to be their greatest mistake. Back on Earth, people returned to their lives as best they could, even as the planet remained on alert. Streets were repaired, supplies were distributed, and damaged buildings were restored. Yet beneath the surface, every human, every action, and every system contributed to something far larger. Humanity was awake, aware, and united in ways no one had expected. The quiet strength of Earth's people, combined with the careful transmission to the alien fleets, created a new reality. Humanity had not reacted with emotion. They had not reacted with fear. They had reacted with intelligence, with strategy, and with patience. And the aliens, who had expected chaos, were now facing a species that would not bend, a species that would not panic, and a species that was quietly preparing for the moment when true retaliation would begin. By the end of the third day, it was clear that Earth had changed. The transmission had done more than warn the aliens. It had reminded humanity of its own strength. Every citizen, every worker, every volunteer knew, without being told, that they were part of something greater. And the aliens, despite their power and technology, had been forced to recognize something they had never understood. Humans were not easily intimidated, and they were far stronger than they appeared. The calm before action was almost palpable. After sending their warning, humans waited, not with fear, but with a quiet focus that stretched across continents. The world seemed to breathe in unison, each person aware of the invisible thread that connected them to the larger effort. Citizens repaired minor damage, tended to each other, and carried on with daily life. But beneath the surface, preparations for the first retaliation were reaching their peak. Every movement, every adjustment, every small human effort was part of a single, coordinated plan. Humans did not strike recklessly. Their response was not born of anger or impulse. It was deliberate, precise, and carefully calculated. Scientists and engineers had spent decades preparing for this possibility. Every alien weapon, every ship formation, every energy grid had been cataloged, analyzed, and mapped. Humans knew where to hit, how to strike, and how to maximize effect while minimizing unnecessary damage. The first retaliation would not be a chaotic barrage. It would be a demonstration of intelligence, efficiency, and inevitability. The first sign of action was subtle. Satellites in orbit adjusted positions, redirecting energy flows and sending encrypted signals across Earth's defense grids. Hidden systems activated with near-perfect timing. Power distribution networks rerouted to maximize energy for specific defense mechanisms. Every action was silent, invisible to most humans on the surface, yet critical in shaping the planet's response. Humanity's enemies watched, unable to see the extent of the coordination. They assumed that humans were disorganized, that any retaliation would be delayed or ineffective. They were wrong. Command centers around the world became hubs of precise activity. Analysts monitored alien movements, tracking fleets, ships, and weapon signatures. Engineers recalibrated defensive arrays, adjusting timing and targeting protocols. Operators ensured that communications remained secure, that each signal reached its destination without interception. Everything was synchronized, from the largest orbital defense station to the smallest local sensor array. Humans had transformed the planet into a single organism of observation and action. And then, the first strike came not from emotion, but from calculation. The humans targeted critical systems within the alien formations: power conduits, navigation hubs, and command nodes. The attack was surgical, precise, and devastating in its effect. Entire command ships were disabled without destruction of life on board. Energy grids that supported offensive strikes were neutralized. Alien forces were left disoriented, confused, and unable to coordinate effectively. The first retaliation was a statement, not a slaughter. It was intelligence meeting strategy. Across Earth, ordinary citizens witnessed the results in subtle ways. Satellites flickered with activity, communication networks stabilized, and damaged infrastructure began to function seamlessly again. People were not aware of every detail of the counterstrike, yet they sensed a shift in power, a moment when humanity's strength became undeniable. Farmers in remote fields noticed that previously disrupted energy signals were restored. City dwellers saw streetlights stabilize and public transport resume without interruption. Every small observation reinforced the sense that humanity was in control. In alien command centers, confusion turned into fear. Their attacks had been anticipated, their formations mapped, their critical systems disabled before they could be used. Every maneuver they attempted met unexpected resistance. They realized, too late, that humans had not only survived their attacks, but had learned from them. Humanity's retaliation was not random. It was informed, precise, and overwhelming in effectiveness. The aliens had underestimated their opponent, and the consequences were immediate. Back on Earth, humans continued their coordination quietly. Engineers monitored the effects of each strike, recalibrating as needed to ensure maximum efficiency. Analysts reviewed incoming data, predicting the aliens' next moves and adjusting defense and offense in real time. Citizens continued their daily routines, unaware of the full scale of the counterattack, yet contributing in small ways by keeping cities functional, supporting emergency systems, and maintaining order. Every action, no matter how small, reinforced the strength of humanity's response. Military forces, long prepared but hidden from view, moved with silent precision. Strategic fleets were deployed to intercept alien units, not recklessly, but with careful timing. Every maneuver was calculated to neutralize threats without unnecessary destruction. Even boarding operations, designed to seize critical alien vessels, were executed with minimal conflict, relying on intelligence and efficiency rather than brute force. Humans were demonstrating that victory could be achieved through preparation and strategy rather than chaos and destruction. The retaliation continued over hours, each strike building on the previous one. Alien systems were systematically disabled, communication networks disrupted, and offensive capabilities neutralized. Every action was deliberate, every movement measured. Humanity was not attacking for revenge, they were asserting control, sending a clear message that the species that had been bombed was not only surviving, but capable of precise, overwhelming response. Across continents, people responded with calm resilience. Communities repaired minor damages from the initial attacks, distributed supplies to those affected, and maintained daily routines. Students studied in shelters, workers continued their tasks, and families shared meals quietly but purposefully. The strikes had not stopped life, they had sharpened it. Humans were acting not out of fear or desperation, but with focus and intelligence, reinforcing the invisible network that had made the retaliation possible. In space, the alien fleets struggled to regroup. Confusion and frustration spread rapidly. Their strikes were ineffective, their command disrupted, and their strategy unraveling. They had expected terror, chaos, and surrender, but they had found calculation, patience, and resilience. Every attempt to regain control was countered by human intelligence. Every move anticipated, every weakness exploited. Humanity was not reckless, it was unstoppable in its precision. Despite the intensity of the retaliation, humans remained remarkably disciplined. No unnecessary destruction occurred. Civilian life continued wherever possible. Damaged infrastructure was repaired quickly. Communication networks ensured that families remained informed and reassured. Humanity's response was not only powerful, it was humane. They demonstrated control, efficiency, and morality even in the midst of conflict. The aliens had assumed that victory required brute force. They had believed that any resistance would be overcome by superior technology. But humanity proved that intelligence, strategy, and unity were just as powerful, if not more so. The Retaliation did not rely solely on weapons. It relied on human ingenuity, cooperation, and resilience. Every citizen, every worker, every analyst, every engineer contributed to the success. Humanity was a species working as a single, coordinated organism. By the end of the first full day of Retaliation, the aliens had suffered significant setbacks. Their fleets were disrupted, critical systems disabled, and command compromised. The humans had not attacked blindly. They had struck with knowledge, precision, and restraint. Observers from other civilizations, watching silently, were stunned. Earth had been bombed, yet it responded with intelligence, control, and an effectiveness that no one could have predicted. Across the planet, people slept, ate, and worked with renewed confidence. The strikes had been devastating to the aliens, but humanity remained intact, resilient, and united. Communities continued to support each other. Engineers maintained critical systems, and scientists analyzed data from the Retaliation to prepare for the next phase. Humans had shown not only that they could survive, they had shown that they could dominate with precision and intelligence. The aliens, meanwhile, struggled to comprehend the situation. Their assumptions had been wrong, their confidence shaken. Humanity had not reacted with chaos or fear. Humanity had responded with planning, coordination, and precision. And that realization, for the first time, planted seeds of doubt among the invaders. They had underestimated a species they thought weak, and now they were paying the price. Humans, however, remained calm. They had not finished their work. Retaliation was only the beginning. Every system, every plan, every human action had been designed to continue until complete control and stability were restored. The first strikes had demonstrated capability. The next steps would demonstrate inevitability. And the aliens, already disoriented and shaken, could do nothing but react, always a step behind, even as the planet settled into a fragile night. With cities glowing and communities active, hidden command centers continued to operate. Humans monitored alien movements, adjusted strategy, and prepared for future engagement. The Retaliation was not a singular event. It was the first chapter in a carefully written response. Every human action, no matter how small, contributed to the ongoing operation. Humanity was awake, aware, and in control. By the end of the day, it was clear. The first Retaliation had changed everything. The aliens had expected chaos, fear, and disarray. They had found intelligence, coordination, and resilience. They had underestimated humans, and now the consequences were undeniable. Humanity had not only survived, they had struck back with precision, restraint, and intelligence. The stage was set for the next. After the first wave of Retaliation, the world slowly returned to a new rhythm. Streets were alive again, with people repairing damage, helping neighbors, and ensuring that life continued. The strikes from the aliens had been devastating in places, but humanity had endured. Communities came together to support each other, offering food, water, and medical care wherever it was needed. Families rebuilt homes, workers repaired infrastructure, and cities restored order. Yet beneath this surface of daily life, humanity's true strength had been revealed to anyone who was watching. Patience, intelligence, and unity. The aliens, meanwhile, hovered above Earth in a state of shock and disbelief. Their strikes had been neutralized, their command structures disrupted, and their fleets disoriented. Every attempt to regain control failed. Humans had not responded with chaos, rage, or panic. They had responded with careful calculation, strategy, and intelligence. The aliens began to understand something that should have been obvious from the start. Humanity was not fragile, and their species could not be easily intimidated. In the hidden command centers beneath Earth, humans continued their work. Scientists and strategists monitored the aftermath of each strike. analyzed alien movements, and refined defensive systems. Engineers repaired damaged infrastructure while preparing contingency measures for any potential new attacks. Every human action, whether above ground or in secret facilities, contributed to a growing network of control and resilience. Humanity had survived, adapted, and now it was asserting dominance in subtle but unmistakable ways. Communication networks buzzed with life. People shared stories of survival, support, and quiet heroism. Students in temporary shelters continued their lessons. Teachers adapted to new methods, and volunteers helped deliver essential supplies. Every act, no matter how small, reinforced the strength of humanity. It was not the spectacle of war that defined this moment. It was the resilience, intelligence, and determination of ordinary people working together toward a common purpose. The aliens' response was slow and confused. They had assumed fear, chaos, and immediate surrender. Instead, they faced calculation, coordination, and adaptability. Every fleet movement was tracked, every weapon neutralized before it could be used effectively. Humanity had not only survived, they had dominated in ways that were unexpected and undeniable. The first wave of retaliation had set the tone, and now the galaxy watched with astonishment. Despite the ongoing presence of alien forces, life on Earth continued. Markets reopened, energy grids stabilized, and transportation systems resumed normal function. Even in areas damaged by the attacks, communities organized quickly to rebuild. There was no panic, no despair, only a quiet, determined focus on restoring order and preparing for whatever might come next. Humanity had proven that survival was not a matter of luck, but of planning, cooperation, and intelligence. In parallel, humans maintained constant surveillance of alien movements. Satellites monitored fleets, hidden sensors tracked energy signatures, and command centers analyzed communication patterns. Every detail was noted, every strategy assessed. Humanity had learned from the initial attacks and the first retaliation, and they were ready for any possible scenario. The aliens, once confident in their superiority, now struggled to understand how humans could be so coordinated, so prepared, and so effective. The impact of humanity's retaliation rippled across the galaxy. Observers from other species watched in awe as Earth's people demonstrated not only survival, but mastery over their attackers. For centuries, humanity had been underestimated, dismissed as weak or primitive. Now, the narrative had changed. Humans were no longer passive, no longer vulnerable. They were a force that demanded attention and respect. The quiet intelligence of humanity, coupled with their unwavering determination, had shifted the balance of power. Back on Earth, ordinary people continued to play crucial roles. Farmers ensured that food supplies remained steady. Medical teams treated the injured, and volunteers distributed essential resources. Communities repaired infrastructure while maintaining vigilance against any further attacks. Humanity's strength was visible not in massive displays of power, but in the countless small acts of cooperation and intelligence that made the planet resilient and unshakable. Alien leaders, now fully aware of their miscalculation, attempted to regroup. Fleets repositioned, communication networks were reinforced, and strategic plans were reevaluated. Yet every move they made was anticipated by humans. The attacks had revealed weaknesses that humanity could exploit if necessary. Each failed maneuver reinforced the aliens' growing realization. They had underestimated a species capable of extraordinary coordination, intelligence, and resilience. Human strategy was not about destruction for its own sake. Instead, it was about control, deterrence, and stability. Precision strikes had neutralized threats, protected civilians, and maintained the integrity of Earth's systems. Every retaliation, every adjustment, was designed to demonstrate capability without unnecessary devastation. Humans had not acted recklessly. They had acted with foresight. intelligence, and restraint. As days turned into weeks, the alien threat began to fade, not because the invaders were defeated entirely, but because they had learned caution. Humanity's response had sent a clear message. Attack a species that is prepared, and you will face consequences far greater than you expected. Across the galaxy, other civilizations began to take notice. Earth was no longer a minor player, it was a strategic power, a species to be respected and feared. Communities on Earth thrived in the aftermath. Schools reopened fully, workers returned to their jobs, and families rebuilt homes. Even those affected by the initial attacks found ways to recover, supported by neighbors, volunteers, and coordinated relief efforts. Humanity's resilience was visible everywhere, in every act of cooperation and determination. It was not the power of weapons alone that had saved the planet. It was the intelligence, unity, and persistence of ordinary people. The aliens, now cautious, maintained distance. They could no longer assume superiority, could no longer rely on fear or intimidation. Humans had demonstrated control, adaptability, and patience. They had survived attacks, neutralized threats, and reasserted dominance without unnecessary aggression. The message was clear. Earth was prepared, humans were capable, and any future attacks would be met with precision and intelligence. In hidden command centers, humans continued to monitor alien activity, maintain systems, and prepare for potential threats. They remained vigilant, not out of fear, but out of responsibility. Every citizen, every worker, every volunteer contributed to the ongoing readiness of the planet. Humanity's strength was not in isolation. It was in coordination, intelligence, and the quiet determination of millions acting together. The galaxy watched in awe as Earth's people rebuilt, strengthened, and asserted control. Observers noted that humans had not retaliated recklessly. They had acted strategically, with patience and intelligence. Every strike had been calculated, every response measured. And the result was undeniable. A species once underestimated had proven itself capable of survival, dominance, and strategic mastery. Back on Earth, life continued in a new, stronger rhythm. Communities were more connected, citizens more aware of their collective power, and systems more resilient than ever before. Humanity had endured the first wave of attacks, retaliated with precision, and emerged stronger. The planet itself seemed to hum with renewed energy, a living testament to human resilience, intelligence, and unity. The aliens, humbled and cautious, had begun to reassess their assumptions. They had expected fear, chaos, and submission. Instead, they found coordination, patience, and calculated retaliation. Humanity had proven that it would not be intimidated, that it would not falter, and that it could defend itself intelligently against overwhelming odds. The balance of power had shifted, and the galaxy could no longer underestimate Earth's people. In the end, the first confrontation became more than a battle, it became a lesson. Humans had shown that strength was not just in weapons, but in intelligence, unity, and resilience. They had survived attacks, demonstrated capability, and reclaimed control with precision and strategy. The aliens had learned the hard way that underestimating humanity was a mistake. Communities thrived. Command centers remained vigilant, and the planet prepared quietly for the future. Humanity had not only survived, they had asserted themselves as a force to be reckoned with. And as the dust settled, the message was clear to all who watched. Earth belonged to humanity, and any who challenged them would face the consequences of underestimating a species that had learned to endure, adapt, and dominate with intelligence and unity.